Hello, I'm Mary Jennings, originally from Dublin, Ireland. Moved to London to take up a job with International Computers Limited in 1979 in London, and spent maybe 15 or so years working there, and then came to Cambridge in the 1990s.
Hi Mary, thank you very much for coming in to talk to us today about your background in computing. Can you give me an idea of how you first became involved in the subject? I believe you studied for a degree at Trinity College.
Yes, I studied natural sciences at Trinity College in Dublin and graduated my final year was actually microbiology. And I spent a couple of years then working in the university, helping out with microbiology lab classes and biological sciences generally. I was looking for a career. The Celtic Tiger hadn't happened yet in Ireland. There were very few openings for microbiologists as such, except maybe school teaching or going on to do a PhD. So I was looking for a career that was technically challenging, interesting, and reasonably well paid. And computing was just expanding then very dramatically. A lot of the computer companies didn't have enough staff to service the demand for computers, and I'm talking about large mainframes those days. So the major computer companies came around the universities and they recruited from a wide variety of backgrounds. My cohort included a philosopher, somebody who had a computer science degree, an English graduate, geography graduate, and myself, a natural scientist. So they took us on board and basically trained us up to the equivalent of a master's in computing, because none of us, apart from the person who had studied computer science before, had actually studied it. So they took us on a 2-year training program where they taught us everything, which, as I say, it was the equivalent of a master's degree in IT. So I started working in London as what was then known as a systems engineer. Not very engineering, it was a term applied to a group of staff who were there to support the sales team basically. So we did pre and post technical support for the sales team, and we also supported customers on site and did programming jobs or spec new configurations for them and so on. So that's how I got into computing.
So you were doing some programming?
Yes, I programmed in COBOL using pencil and paper, and then my code was sent off to the punch room where the women typed up punch cards. So your program was a set of punch cards in a cardboard box, which I then took to the customer I was working for, which happened to be a company in Cambridgeshire, bizarrely. But I took my program, the cards in a box, on the train, and then I had the use of their mainframe computer when they clocked off for the day. So they let me have their mainframe computer from about, say, 4:30 till about 8:30. And I then loaded my program, sorted out the errors and ran it. So although I was working for a major computer company, International Computers Limited, in London, we had no direct access to machines ourselves. The only way you could get access to a machine, you could book a session at one of our customer centres where they had computers there for customers to see, or as with the company it was a domestic billing system, amending a domestic billing system for supply of water. The company I was working for, they allowed me to use their machines. So I had to travel up from London to Peterborough, and then I was picked up at Peterborough and taken to Wisbech, where the company was based.
That's incredible.
Yes.
So did that feel quite onerous to you then, or was it just something you accepted?
No, I mean, no, we didn't know anything else. So yeah, I mean, it was great to be able to have a whole machine to myself and to run my code. And then we got green listing paper with errors and so on. And I took that back, worked through the logic errors and the compiler errors, did the same again. So no, it felt absolutely fine.
Right. So you were in London.
Yes.
And you started to get to know other people there.
Yes.
And I believe you said that you had a lot of friends, a lot of
Yeah.
female friends who were also interested
Yeah.
in computing.
Yes.
Can you tell me a bit about that, please?
Yes, I unfortunately I can't remember how we originally met, but we met at some event or other, and we realised that there were several of us who were working in computing. One was she was an econometricist who programmed in Fortran. Somebody was a lecturer. I was working as a technical support person for ICL. Somebody else was programming in, I think she was a salesperson, but she later became a programmer. And so we just liked talking about computing and, you know, jobs, and we all got on well together. And so it was, we were friends and we were IT professionals who enjoyed talking about IT and what was happening in the industry, what was happening at work and so on. Yeah, and we all got on together.
Did you feel at that period that women were in the minority in the computing industry?
Not from our point of view. We didn't feel in the minority. We enjoyed our work and felt it was a good job, interesting work, and a good career, and that more women might enjoy this. I think people think working in IT or computing is a very, very narrow career, but you can see the range of work that we were doing, and we thought, you know, it's good fun, it's good money, we're enjoying it. In terms of the level of sexism, maybe we weren't too aware of it until maybe later. In the 80s.
Okay, that's interesting. So was it this group of people that you were working with at that time that you then went on to become involved in the Equal Opportunities Commission?
Yes, we ran a few workshops in London. We liked computing, and we wanted to tell other people about it and, you know, what a good career it was. And so on. So we ran a few workshops for the London Women's Centre was where we held it, and the workshop was packed out. Over 100 came. It was a Saturday afternoon, and that showed us the level of interest that there was in computing as it was then. We were also working in IT as well. We wanted to do something rather than write stuff, and we were aware that microcomputers were becoming available, and given the level of interest that we'd seen, and there was a lot of press interest as well in the early 80s about microcomputers and so on. So we wanted to do something, so we decided to buy one of these computers.
So what year was this?
1981.
1981.
Yeah, and so the computer we bought was the Osborne. But because we had established the group as such, and we were a group of women, and we were mainly doing projects for other women's groups in London, the Equal Opportunities Commission got to know about us.
Okay.
And they were interested in promoting opportunities, well, equal opportunities, but opportunities for women. And so they got in touch with us, and we helped. We were the focus of one of the projects that they got underway, which is called Working with Computers, which illustrated lots of different careers women could have in computing. The other way I got involved with the Equal Opportunities Commission was I ran evening classes with a analyst programmer friend of mine in North London, and I had the idea that the teaching material that we were using might be funded by the Equal Opportunities Commission, and then that material could then be used in other IT type classes. The teaching material featured the analogy of a knitting pattern for a computer program, which I still think works very well these days. So we tried to have the the teaching material with a female focus. And so they funded us to write that material, and it got published. But it was interesting. I mean, we were quite idealistic, and it was a reasonably idealistic time. There was a sense of possibility that you could do things, that you could make a difference in the world. And there were bodies out there who gave grants to community groups. I mean, we were all working, we weren't in education or academic research at the time, but you could devise a project, present it to somebody like the Equal Opportunities Commission or the Greater London Council, which funded a lot of community activity in London, and get a grant. And so it was a lively, vibrant time.
And you all obviously felt quite keenly that you wanted to share your skills.
Definitely, yeah. We were excited about IT. There was a level of interest in IT generally, particularly around microcomputers, from the media. People wanted to know more about microcomputers for their working life and so on. And so there was a great need for more education and knowledge about IT, and we were very happy to provide that. I mean, we were, I guess, the experts then, because we had been working in IT, all of us, the group that I was in, for several years. So we had a lot to offer. I should say that we were all working full time at this time. So we would do this in the evenings and at weekends because we enjoyed doing it. And we got a lot of positive feedback. People liked what we were doing. And we were learning as well, of course, because it was our opportunity as well to learn more about microcomputers, because, you know, microcomputers didn't arrive on anybody's desk at work for a long time afterwards.
Can you remember the first model that you saw?
The first model was a research machines which somebody borrowed from their college. It was like a tank, a very black, ugly machine with two bars at the side, indestructible, because it was used by students in I think it was a further education college, so built to withstand damage. Anyway, so we were excited enough to have that in, as it happened, somebody's kitchen, to have a computer the size of a box on somebody's kitchen table was a very exciting prospect compared to me having to go up to Wisbech, you know, in using this big room, massive array of hardware. So it was very exciting. So we did some work with the research machine. And then we decided to buy our own. So we looked around, and we liked the Osborne one. We were very fond of the Osborne one. It came with all its own software, and it was transportable. It turned out not to be as portable as we originally envisaged. So that was that was the first computer that we bought. But the first computer that we saw was the research machines one.
So that was key to you purchasing the Osborne one, that you could transport it to places.
Yes, so the idea was we would take it out to other groups in the voluntary sector and either do some education and training with them. But in the end what happened is they sent word to us. So we did mailing list labels for a newspaper, for instance. So we would enter the name and address details, print off a set of labels, and then send the labels to them. So the work came to us rather than we going out with this luggable, as the term was then.
Yeah, what did you feel when you got it first of all? Did it surprise you? Because it actually is quite heavy, isn't it?
Yeah, we were delighted.
You loved it anyway?
Yeah, no, we've got some photos of us taking it out of a car, and we're just really very excited at having all this like power, I guess, in our hands. We were just delighted with it. It was also creamy coloured. It looked far more attractive than the research machines, and it was a very nice design.
What about the small screen?
The small screen, it was usable on a one-to-one basis, but we bought an external monitor and we placed it on top of the on top. So that worked really well, actually.
And so how long did you have that?
Probably, I don't know, a year and a half or so.
Okay.
And we knew that IBM were about to bring out their own personal computer, and IBM was a big player, and perhaps the biggest player in computing in the 80s. So we were aware that they were going to bring out this, and we'd put in a grant application to the Greater London Council to buy another machine. They wanted us to buy an Apricot, which is a British-made product. We weren't too happy about that, and if IBM were bringing out their own personal computer PC, we felt this was going to be the industry standard, and we wanted to have the industry standard. So we had a meeting with some IT person, the GLC, and we said, we don't want your Apricots, we want IBM PC. And we got on really well with the IBM PC, and we bought several variants of the IBM PC, which it was the industry standard, and then because it was the industry standard, other companies set up to build IBM clones, which were cheaper and more made of less sturdy material and so on. But it was the dominant computer in this sort of a small workplace voluntary group organisation sector, and yeah, we loved the IBM PC more than we loved the Osborne.
Can you remember how much you paid for the
I
IBM?
can't remember how much we paid. I just can't.
In
remember.
the region?
No, I just can't.
But a lot of money.
Probably, yeah, probably thousands. I mean, it would be easy to find out what an IBM PC cost then, but yeah, I would say thousands.
So you said you worked with that for a number of years.
Yes, it was the twin floppy version, then they brought out a hard drive version, then they brought out a larger hard drive version. We missed out on the networking, so all the machines we used were standalone machines, so we never got into having them networked. We were about to do that, and then I think we all went our separate ways, whatever, just before the networking era.
So can you remember the period when microcomputers started to come into schools, like the BBC Micro or the Spectrums?
Yeah. The machines I taught on in not so much schools but in colleges were the BBC Micro and the Commodore PET. That was a very, very popular machine for teaching. And the Commodore PET one stored the programs on cassette tapes, ordinary music cassette tapes. That's what we used to do. And the BBC Micro.
How did you feel about the BBC Micro, using that in teaching?
It was fine. Everybody, I mean, because it was promoted by the BBC and they had, books and so on with it, it was a bit of a clunky machine. I didn't particularly get on with some of the key combinations because I was used to touch typing, and the keyboard was a bit odd. But it was very successful, and loads of people bought BBC Micros for all sorts of reasons, and it was a nice design. It's still durable. We're still using them today here, the Centre for Computing History, and they're still going strong.
They are indeed.
I mean, there was TV programs, of course, to go with the BBC Micro, and because it was a government initiative, I don't know, actually, don't delete all that. But anyway, because it was promoted by the BBC, it became very dominant very quickly. But not so much in the business world, but certainly in education.
So how did you feel? I wondered if you could sort of cast your mind back to those evenings that you had with your friends and colleagues that you were working with. I remember you saying that you'd have a bottle of wine and sort of chat away together.
That's right. Yeah.
How did you speculate about, or what did you speculate about the future? What did you feel about these new computers, these new personal computers? Did you ever, in your wildest imaginings, imagine the world that we have today, or how did you see things going?
We didn't really look too far into the future. I think we were excited about what we were doing. We thought the the microcomputer made like printing documents really easy, so you didn't have to hand set all your material, then send it off to the printers, then have it back. You could print a newsletter out really quickly, and we thought that was great for, you know, all sorts of community activity and so on. I learned to touch type because I was working in a college at the time, and I wanted to print out my assignments for students, and instead of being on a typewriter, you could just type them up and print them out, as many copies as you wish. So we did think that microcomputers would be very liberating in the widest sense of that word. It freed up a lot of people to do a lot of things very immediately, so you didn't have to order stuff in, send stuff off, wait for stuff to come back, and so on. Yeah, so very liberating, very enabling. That wasn't really a word that was used. It's not an 80s term, enabling, but it enabled people to do a lot of things that they, you know, do your own accounts, you know, do your own budgets.
So you felt very optimistic about the future.
Yeah.
Did you feel at that time too, with regard to programming, that it should be something that children should be taught in schools, that it should be something that would help?
Absolutely. I mean, to go back to the educational resources pack that I produced, yeah, programming was definitely in there. So the way you understand how a machine works is you learn to program it. So we programmed, and we taught people to program in BASIC, basically. So the adult ed classes that I did were, you know, this is how you understand how a computer works. Then there was a phrase when the Microsoft packages became dominant, like, you know, word processing, whatever, and I think students studying IT became knowing how a spreadsheet works or a word processor worked. But I've always felt that operating systems were far more important than application packages, and people should be taught what an operating system is, not just like Windows. You know, not about how Windows works, but the level below that, where your operating system controlled all the hardware. I've always felt that it's very important as well. So there's two aspects to program I felt were really important. To program a program to do something, and also to understand the second level of programming, the software, the systems that interact with the hardware.
Women in computer science, and, you know, women going into higher education and studying computer science, still today, all of these years later, there are very few taking it up. What are your feelings about that?
Yeah, it's an intractable problem. The only way you could do computing when I was a student was to do it as part of a maths degree. So you did computer science as part of a maths degree. And then you had more sort of business computing type degrees. It was an issue then, and it's an issue now. Every now and again, when the stats came out for number of students taking up computer science degrees, the numbers were low then, and they were low, and they're still low, and I don't quite know what to do about that. It's very disappointing. I ran a workshop for the Open University called Equal Bytes, BYTES, about, you know, what to do, and it's still a difficult problem. I think the sciences are doing better than computer science. So because of initiatives like I was going to say Athena's one, but that's a university issue. I think, you know, the sciences seem to be doing better at you know, the exercises like girls can do physics and all those sorts of things, role models, seeing female teachers. The big engineering companies are desperate to take on technicians, young female technicians, and, you know, they've been very successful. I think computing as a career, I think, is still relatively good, good for women. But in terms of computer science, I don't know what it is.
Right. No, it's a conundrum, isn't it?
It is, yes.
So looking back over your career to that period in the 80s when you were young and involved in the computing industry, it was a good time for you? It was a good experience?
It was a good time, yeah, it was a good time. I perhaps was a bit cavalier about my career because I thought I could always get a job. So the average half-life of a computer programmer was about 3 years. People changed jobs quite quickly. Companies did come and go, of course, as well. A couple of companies I worked for no longer exist, like Data General doesn't exist anymore, ICL doesn't exist anymore. But you always thought you could get another job. So it allowed me to maybe do things that in retrospect I wouldn't do now that I'm older and need the money.
So it was good to be young then.
Oh yeah, no, it was great. I mean, I nearly always got offered every job I went after. The one job I didn't get was because I didn't have a conventional master's degree, but I was second, and I got some part-time teaching as a consequence of that. I think there's a big issue in terms of age, both for men and women in IT anymore. I know that from my own experience, and also from people I know, male friends of mine. So to be young and working in IT is great. To be old and working in IT is not great. And I think we're just all get edged out, regardless of gender.
Well, thank you very much, Mary, for coming in and sharing those memories with us today here at the Centre for Computing History.
No, it's been great. Thank you very much for the opportunity to revisit my own history.
Thank you.